Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. I have got people calling and calling, and I have set my phone on Do Not Disturb, and for some reason, every 10th call, it stops what I'm recording, so I have to stop and start all over, and it is so annoying. Okay, anyways, so I'm going to pick up on, I think this is what, part 4 of reading Facts Are Facts by Benjamin Freedman. This is fair use for the purposes of education and commentary, okay? And I think even this book, it's not even a book, it's just a letter, but I think it was written because they claim fair use at the beginning of the book. So I don't know who the publisher is, but whoever published it claimed fair use. I am sorry, I've got to move the tripod. Okay, so I can get comfy. All right, let's pick up where we left off yesterday. The secondary meanings of words often become generally accepted meanings of words formerly having entirely different meanings. This is accomplished by the expenditure of great amounts of money for well-planned publicity. Today, if you ask for a camel, someone will hand you a cigarette by that name. Today, if you ask for a piece of ivory, someone will hand you a piece of soap by that name. You will never receive either a desert animal or a piece of the tusk of a male elephant. That must illustrate the extent to which these secondary meanings are able to practically eclipse the original and correct meanings of words in the minds of the general public. The secondary meaning for the word Jew today has practically totally eclipsed the original and correct meaning of the word Jew when it was introduced as a word in the English language. This phenomenon is not uncommon. The United States Supreme Court has recognized the secondary meaning of words. The highest court in the land has established as basic law that secondary meanings can acquire priority rights to the use of any dictionary word, which is totes cray, okay? Because we are on a very slippery slope if words don't mean what they say they mean. And I have always harped on the fact that words mean things, right? Okay. Well-planned and well-financed worldwide publicity through every available media by well-organized groups of so-called or self-styled Jews for 3 centuries have created a secondary meaning for the word Jew, which has completely blacked out the original and correct meaning of the word Jew. There can be no doubt about that. There is not a person in the whole English-speaking world today who regards a Jew as a Judean in the literal sense of the word. That was the correct and only meaning in the 18th century. The generally accepted secondary meaning of the word Jew today, with practically no exceptions, is made up of 4 almost universally believed theories. These 4 theories are that a so-called or self-styled Jew is 1, a person who today professes the form of religious worship known as Judaism, a person who claims to belong to a racial group associated with the ancient Semites, a person directly the descendant of an ancient nation which thrived in Palestine in Bible history, and 4, a person blessed by divine intentional design with certain superior cultural character denied to other racial, religious, or national groups, all rolled into one. The present generally accepted secondary meaning of the word Jew is fundamentally responsible for the confusion in the minds of Christians regarding elementary tenets of the Christian faith. It is likewise responsible today, to a very great extent, for the dilution of devotion of countless Christians for their Christian faith. The implications, inferences, and innuendos of the word Jew today to the preponderant majority of intelligent and informed Christians is contradictory and in complete conflict with incontestable historic fact. Christians who cannot be fooled any longer are suspect of the Christian clergy who continue to repeat and repeat and repeat ad nauseum their pet theme song, Jesus Was a Jew. It basically now approaches a psychosis, and we have far surpassed that psychosis because this book was written in the 50s, and excuse me, now just look at us, all right? Countless Christians know today that they were brainwashed by the Christian clergy on the subject. Jesus was a Jew, and that's not all they're brainwashed on, but I'm going to keep reading. The resentment they feel is not yet apparent to the Christian clergy. Christians now are demanding from the Christian clergy the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It is now time for the Christian clergy to tell Christians that they should have told what they should have told them long ago. Of all religious groups in the world, Christians appear to be the least informed of any on this subject. Have their spiritual leaders been reckless with this truth? Countless intelligent and informed Christians no longer accept unchallenged assertions by the Christian clergy that Jesus in his lifetime was a member of a group in Judea which practiced a religious form of worship then, which is today called Judaism, or that Jesus in his lifetime here on earth was a member of the racial group which today includes the preponderant majority of all so-called or self-styled Jews in the world, or that the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world today are the lineal descendants of the nation in Judea, of which Jesus was a national in his lifetime here on earth, or that the cultural characteristics of so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world today correspond with the cultural characteristics of Jesus during his lifetime here on earth and his teachings while he was here on earth for a brief stay. Christians will no longer believe that the race, religion, nationality, and culture of Jesus and the race, religion, nationality, and culture of the so-called or self-styled Jews today or their ancestors have a common origin or character. Let me check my mic. Okay, still on. The resentment by Christians is more ominous than the Christian clergy suspect. Well, it probably was, but in my last attempt at recording this video, I brought up the question of whether back then in the 50s, churches got the 501c3 tax exemption, because that tax exemption is nothing but a wall that is put up so that the pastors cannot tell you the truth or they will not get their tax break. So y'all need to start looking into this stuff. We can no longer just believe what we're told. It's not good enough anymore, okay? You've got to look into stuff. Okay. Under existing conditions, the Christian clergy will find that ignorance is not bliss, nor wisdom folly. Christians everywhere today are seeking to learn the authentic relationship between the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world today and the Judeans who populated Judea before, during, and after the time of Jesus. Christians now insist that they be told correctly by the Christian clergy about the racial, religious, national, and cultural background of the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world today, and the basis for associating these backgrounds with the racial, religious, national, and cultural background of Jesus in his lifetime in Judea. The intelligent and informed Christians are alerted to the exploded myth that the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world today are the direct descendants of Judeans amongst whom Jesus lived during his lifetime here on earth. Christians today are also becoming more and more alerted day by day while the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world for 3 centuries have spent uncounted sums of money to manufacture the fiction that Judeans in the time of Jesus were Jews rather than Judeans, and that Jesus was a Jew. Christians are becoming more and more aware day by day of all the economic and political advantages accruing to the so-called or self-styled Jews as a direct result of their success in making Christians believe that Jesus was a Jew. He was not. In the secondary meaning they have created for the 18th century word Jew. So the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world today represent to themselves Christians as Jews only in the secondary meaning of the word Jew. They seek to thereby prove their kinship with Jesus, and they're not related at all. They emphasize this fiction to Christians constantly, and they've been doing it. This book is 70 years old, and most of the church now doesn't even question the Zionist state of Israel. They don't even question it, okay? It's bananas. And, truthers, okay, and I say that term loosely, because some of them, believe that Yahweh is Jesus's father, which is absolute insanity. Anyways, I digress. Okay. To allege that Jesus was a Jew in the sense that during his lifetime, Jesus professed and practiced the form of religious worship known and practiced under the modern name of Judaism is false and fiction of the most blasphemous nature. If to be a so-called or self-styled Jew, then or now the practice of Judaism was a requirement, then Jesus was certainly not a so-called Jew. Jesus abhorred and denounced the form of religious worship practiced in Judea in his lifetime, which is known and practiced today under its new name, Judaism, which we're going to have to look and see if that is factually correct. That religious belief was known then as Phariseeism, which he then calls Talmudism. But I don't know, were they practicing Talmudism or were they just practicing Yahwism, which is the 10 Commandments and all the 613 other, or 603 other commandments. Okay. The eminent Rabbi Louis Finkelstein, the head of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, often referred to as the Vatican of Judaism, in his foreword to the first edition of his world-famous classic, The Pharisees, the sociological background of their faith, on page 21 states, Judaism, Pharisaism became Talmudism, Talmudism became medieval rabbinism, and medieval rabbinism became modern rabbinism. But throughout these changes in name, the spirit of the ancient Pharisees survived unaltered from Palestine to Babylonia, from Babylonia to North Africa, Italy, Spain, France, and Germany, from these to Poland, Russia, and Eastern Europe generally. Ancient Pharisaism has wandered, demonstrates the enduring importance which attaches to Pharisaism as a religious movement. The celebrated Rabbi Louis Finkelstein, in his great classic quoted from the above, traces the origin of the form of religious worship practiced today under the present name Judaism to its origin as Pharisaism and Judaism in the time of Pharisaism and Judea in the time of Jesus. Rabbi Louis Finkelstein confirms what the eminent Rabbi Adolf Moses states in his great classic Yahwism and Other Discourses, in collaboration with the celebrated Rabbi H.G. Enlow, published in 1903 by the Louisville section of the Council of Jewish Women, in which Rabbi Adolf Moses, on page 1, states, "Among the innumerable misfortunes which have befallen, the most fatal in its consequences is the name Judaism. Worse still, the Jews themselves, who have gradually come to call their religion Judaism, yet neither in biblical nor post-biblical, neither in Talmudic nor in much later times is the term Judaism ever heard. The Bible speaks of the religion as Torah, Yahweh, the instructions or the moral law revealed by Yahweh, and other places as Yirat Yahweh, the fear and reverence of Yahweh. And these other appellations continued for many ages to stand for the religion. To distinguish it from Christianity and Islam, the Jewish philosophers sometimes designate it as the faith or the belief of the Jews. It was Flavius Josephus, writing for the instruction of Greeks and Romans, who coined the term Judaism in order to pit it against Hellenism. By Hellenism was understood the civilization comprising language, poetry, religion, art, science, manners, customs, institutions, which had spread from Greece, its original home, over vast regions of Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Christians eagerly seized upon the name. The Jews themselves, who intensely detested the traitor Josephus, refrained from reading his works. But you should read the works of Flavius Josephus, because it exposes a lot of what we're taught in Christianity as complete and utter BS. And that is what I seek to do in this channel, is detect BS. Okay, that's what we're all here for. Anyways, hence the term Judaism coined by Josephus remained absolutely unknown to them. It was only in comparatively recent times, after the Jews became familiar with modern Christian literature, that they began to name their religions Judaism. This statement by the world's two leading authorities on this subject clearly establishes beyond any question or any doubt that so-called Judaism was not the name of any form of religious worship practiced in Judea in the time of Jesus. The Flavius Josephus referred to in the above quotation lived in the 1st century. It was he who coined the word Judaism in the 1st century explicitly for the purpose recited clearly above. Religious worship known and practiced today under the name Judaism by the so-called or self-styled Jews throughout the world was known and practiced in Judea in the time of Jesus under the name of Pharisaism, according to Rabbi Louis Finkelstein, head of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, and all the other most competent and qualified recognized authorities on the subject. The form of religious worship known as Pharisaism in Judea in the time of Jesus was a religious practice based exclusively upon the Talmud. The Talmud in the time of Jesus was the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, all rolled into one, of those who practice Pharisaism. The Talmud today occupies the same relative position with respect to those who profess Judaism. The Talmud today virtually exercised totalitarian dictatorship over the lives of so-called or self-styled Jews, whether they are aware of that fact or not. And not just Jews, but everybody, okay? It is a white supremacist manifesto is what it is. And I don't know. I'm going to have to do more research on whether this is true or not, because Judaism is Talmudism. But then you have the Orthodox Jews who actually still adhere to and practice, at least, Torah. But their God is Yahweh, all of them. Okay, who is Satan? Okay, like, let's get the net here. Anyways, the Talmud today virtually exercises totality. Okay, we already said that. They extend their authority far beyond the legitimate limits of spiritual matters. Their authority has no equal outside religion. Okay, and I want to stop right there. Well, no, I'm not. But I am going to insert here that basically this is all coming to the culmination of the Noahide laws, which are incoming. And this is your warning, okay? People that are Torah observant, you're being primed for the Noahide laws and to go ahead and deny Jesus and go along with Yahweh, okay? Yahweh is not the Most High. He is not. The role the Talmud plays in Judaism as it is practiced today is officially stated by the eminent Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer, the director of interreligious activities of the North American Jewish Committee and the president of the Jewish Chaplains Association of the Armed Forces of the United States. In his present capacity as official spokesman for the American Jewish Committee, the self-styled Vatican of Judaism, Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer wrote a most revealing and comprehensive article with the title, "What is a Jew?" which was published as a featured article in Look magazine in June 17, 1952 issue. In that article, Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer evaluated the significance of the Talmud to Judaism today. In that illuminating treatise on that important subject, the most qualified authority at the time, Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer stated, "The Talmud consists of 63 books of legal, ethical, and historical writings of the ancient rabbis. It was edited 5 centuries after the birth of Jesus." Of course it was, because they had to edit it, because in it they say that Jesus is burning in hell and shit. How lovely, how quaint. It is a compendium of law and love. Sounds like the loving God Yahweh, doesn't it? Just unaliving, and babies, whoever, just indiscriminately. It doesn't matter, right? Okay. It is the legal code which forms the basis of religious law, and it is the textbook used in the training of rabbis. In view of this official evaluation of the importance of the Talmud and the practice of Judaism today by the highest body of so-called or self-styled Jews in the world, it is very necessary at this time, my dear Dr. Goldstein, because remember, this guy is writing a letter to the Catholic Jew, Dr. Goldstein, to inquire a little further into the subject of the Talmud. In his lifetime, the eminent Michael Rodkinson, the assumed name of a so-called or self-styled Jew, who is one of the world's great authorities on the Talmud, wrote, "History of the Talmud." This great classic on the subject was written by Michael Rodkinson in collaboration with the celebrated Rabbi Isaac M. Wise. In his History of the Talmud, Michael Rodkinson wrote on page 70, "Is the literature that Jesus was familiar with in his early years yet in existence in the world? Is it possible for us to get at it? Can we ourselves review the ideas, the statements, the modes of reasoning and thinking on moral and religious subjects which were current in his time and must have been evolved by him during those 30 silent years when he was pondering his future mission?" To such inquiries, the learned class of Jewish rabbis answer by holding up the Talmud. "Here," say they, "is the source from whence Jesus of Nazareth drew the teachings which enabled him to revolutionize the world." And the question becomes, therefore, an interesting one to every Christian. What is the Talmud? The Talmud, then, is the written form of that which in the time of Jesus was called the traditions of the elders, to which he makes frequent allusions. What sort of book is it? Stimulated by that invitation, every Christian worthy of the name should immediately take the trouble to seek the answer to that interesting question to every Christian. My dear Dr. Goldstein, your articles do not indicate whether you have taken the time and the trouble to personally investigate what sort of book the Talmud is, either before or after your conversion to Catholicism. Have you ever done so? If you have done so, what is the conclusion you have reached regarding that sort of book? What is your personal, unbiased, and unprejudiced opinion of the Talmud? Is it consistent with your present views as a devout Roman Catholic and a tried and true Christian, which we know Catholics and Christians are essentially the same, but they think that they're different. But a Protestant is just a protesting Catholic. Okay, where was I? A devout, okay, and a tried and true Christian. Can you spare a few moments to drop me a few lines on your present the views? They spoke weird in the 50s. In case you have never had the opportunity to investigate the contents of the 63 books of the Talmud, so well summarized by the Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer in his illuminating article, What is a Jew?, previously quoted, may I here impose upon your precious time and quote a few passages for you until you find the time to conveniently investigate the Talmud's contents personally. If I can be of any assistance to you in doing so, please do not hesitate to let me know in what manner you can use my help. From the birth of Jesus until this day, there have never been recorded more vicious and vile libelous blasphemies of Jesus, of Christians, and the Christian faith by anyone, anywhere, or any time than you will find between the covers of the infamous 63 books, which are the legal code which forms the basis of Jewish religious law, as well as the textbook used in the training of the rabbis. The explicit and implicit irreligious character and implications of the contents of the Talmud will open your eyes as they have never been opened before. The Talmud reviles Jesus, Christians, and the Christian faith as the priceless spiritual and cultural heritage of Christians has never been reviled before or since the Talmud was completed in the 5th century. Okay, so, all right. You will have to excuse the foul, obscene, indecent, lewd, and vile language you will see here as verbatim quotations from the official, unabridged translation of the Talmud into English. Be prepared for a surprise. In the year 1935, the international hierarchy of so-called or self-styled Jews, for the first time in history, published an official, unabridged translation of the complete Talmud in the English language with complete footnotes. What possessed them to make this translation into English is one of the unsolved mysteries. It was probably done because many so-called or self-styled Jews of the younger generation were unable to read the Talmud in the many ancient languages in which the original 63 books of the Talmud were first composed by their authors in many lands between 200 BC and 500 AD. The international hierarchy of so-called or self-styled Jews selected the most learned scholars to make this official translation of the Talmud into English. Those famous scholars also prepared official footnotes explaining passages of the Talmud where they were required. This official unabridged translation of the Talmud into English with the official footnotes was printed in London in 1935 by the Sonsino Press, or Soncino Press? I don't know, whatever. It has been always referred to as the Sonsino edition of the Talmud. A very limited number of the Sonsino edition were printed. They were not made available to any purchaser. The Sonsino edition of the Talmud is to be found in the Library of Congress and the New York Public Library. A set of the Sonsino edition of the Talmud has been available to me for many years. They have become rare collector's items by now. And this was in the 50s, okay, y'all? The Sonsino edition of the Talmud, with its footnotes, is like a double-edged sword. It teaches the Talmud to countless millions of the younger generation of so-called or self-styled Jews who are not able to read the Talmud in the many ancient languages in which the Talmud was written by its authors between 200 BC and 500 AD. It also teaches Christians what the Talmud has to say about Jesus, about Christians, and about the Christian faith. Someday, this is bound to backfire. Christians will someday challenge the assertion that the Talmud is the sort of book from which Jesus allegedly drew the teachings which enabled him to revolutionize the world on moral and religious subjects. The rumbling is already heard in places. Verbatim quotations from the Sonsonno edition of the Talmud are required to illustrate the enormity of the Talmud's iniquity. My comments without verbatim quotations will prove inadequate to do that. In spite of the low language, I will of necessity therefore include in this letter to you. I have no compunctions in the matter because the United States Post Office authorities do not bar the Sonsonno edition of the Talmud from the mails. Nevertheless, I apologize in advance for the language which will of necessity appear in this letter to you. You now understand. The official unabridged Sonsonno edition of the Talmud, published in 1935, was translated into English with notes, glossary, and indices by such eminent Talmudic scholars as Rabbi Dr. I. Epstein, Rabbi Dr. Samuel Deitches, Rabbi Dr. Israel W. Slotky, M.A. Lit. D., the Reverend Dr. A. Cohen, M.A. Ph.D., and other celebrated Talmudic scholars as E.W. Kurtzner, M.A. Ph.D., M. S.C., Jacob Schotter, A. Michon, A. Cohen, M.A., Ph.D., Maurice Simon, M.A., and the very Reverend the Chief Rabbi, Dr. J.H. Hertz, wrote the foreword for the Sonsonno edition of the Talmud. The very Reverend Rabbi Hertz was at the time the Chief Rabbi of England. The following are but a few of the many similar quotations with footnotes from the Sonsonno edition of the Talmud, the sort of book from which Jesus allegedly drew the teachings which enabled him to revolutionize the world on moral and religious subjects. All right. Let me check my mic. All right. Book, Sanhedrin 55b through 55a. Quote, what is meant by this? Rabbi said. Pederasty with a child below 9 years of age is not deemed as pederasty with a child above that. Samuel said, pederasty with a child below 3 years is not treated as with a child above that. What is the basis of their dispute? Rabbi maintains that only he who is able to engage in sexual intercourse may, as the passive subject of pederasty, throw guilt upon the actual offender, whilst he who is unable to engage in sexual intercourse cannot be a passive subject of pederasty in that respect. But Samuel maintains, Scripture writes, and thou shalt not lie with mankind as with the lyings of a woman. It has been taught in accordance with R-A-B, pederasty at the age of 9 and a day. 55a, he who commits bestiality, whether naturally or unnaturally, or a woman who causes herself to be bestially abused, whether naturally or unnaturally, is liable to punishment. Disgusting. Disgusting. Okay, footnotes. 1. The reference is to the passive subject of sodomy. As stated in Supra 54a, guilt is incurred by the active participant, even if the former be a minor. What? I.e., less than 13 years old. Now, however, it is stated that within this age, a distinction is drawn. 2. Rab makes 9 years the minimum, but if one committed sodomy with a child of a lesser age, no guilt is incurred. Samuel makes 3 the minimum. How gracious. At 9 years, a male attains sexual matureness. Disgusting. And then they quote Leviticus, I'm bad at Roman numerals, 28:22. Rashi reads, Hebrew characters, ED, instead of ZZZ. Oh, Rashi reads XXX, Hebrew characters, ED, instead of in parentheses ZZZ. I don't know what this means. In parentheses, Hebrew characters, ED. In our printed text, a male aged 9 years and a day who commits, etc., there are thus 3 distinct causes in this Baraita. The first, a male aged 9 years and a day, refers to the passive subject of pederasty, the punishment being incurred by the adult offender. This must be its meaning, because firstly, the active offender is never explicitly designated as male, it being understood just as the Bible states, thou shalt not lie with mankind, where only the sex of the passive participant is mentioned. And secondly, if the age reference is to the active party, the guilt being incurred by the passive adult party, Why single out pederasty? In all crimes of incest, the passive adult does not incur guilt unless the other party is at least 9 years and a day. Hence, the Baraita supports Rab's contention that 9 years and a day is the minimum age of the passive partner for the adult to be liable. Emphasis in original.ed. Before giving any more verbatim quotations from the sort of book from which it is falsely alleged that Jesus drew the teachings which enabled him to revolutionize the world on moral and religious subjects, I wish to here again recall to your attention the official statement by Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer in Look magazine for June 17, 1952. In that official statement made by Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer on behalf of the American Jewish Committee, self-styled the Vatican of Judaism, informed the 20 million readers of Look magazine that the Talmud, in all caps and quotations, is the legal code which forms the basis of Jewish religious law, and it is the text book used in the training of rabbis. Please bear this in mind as you read further. Before continuing, I also wish to all your attention to another feature, confirming the official view of Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer, the New York Times on May 20th, 1954, ran a news item under the headline, Rabbis Plan a Fund to Endow 2 Chairs. The news item itself ran as follows. Special to the New York Times, Uniontown, PA, May 19th. Plans for raising $500,000 for the creation of 2 endowed chairs for the Jewish Theological Seminary of America were announced today at the 54th Annual Convention of the Rabbinical Assembly of America. The professorships would be known as the Louis Ginsburg Chair in Talmud. This is further proof that the Talmud is not yet quite a dead letter in the training of rabbis. Is further proof needed on that question? The world's leading authorities on the Talmud confirm that the official unabridged Sonsino edition of the Talmud, translated into English, follows the original texts with great exactness. It is almost a word-for-word translation in the original text. In his famous classic, The History of the Talmud, Michael Rodkinson, the leading authority on the Talmud, in collaboration with the celebrated Reverend Dr. Isaac M. Wise, states, quote, with the conclusion of the first volume of this work at the beginning of the 20th century, we would invite the reader to take a glance over the past of the Talmud, in which he will see that not only was the Talmud not destroyed, but was also saved, that not a single letter of it is missing, and now it is flourishing to such a degree as cannot be found in its past history. The Talmud is one of the wonders of the world. During the 20 centuries of its existence, it survived in its entirety, and not only has the power of its foes failed to destroy even a single line, but it has not even been able to materially to weaken its influence for any length of time. It still dominates the minds of a whole people who venerate its contents as divine truth. Disgusting. The colleges for the study of the Talmud are increasing almost in every place where Israel dwells, especially in this country where millions are gathered for the funds of the 2 colleges, the Hebrew Union College of Cincinnati and the Jewish Theological Seminary of America in New York, in which the chief study is the Talmud. There are also in our city houses of learning, yeshivot for the study of the Talmud in the Lower East Side, where many young men are studying the Talmud every day. And they still do. You remember that tunnel that they found? They are discussing PDF files, all of them, the lot of them, okay? This divine truth, which a whole people venerate, of which not a single letter of it is missing, and today is flourishing to such a degree as cannot be found in its history, is illustrated by the additional verbatim quotations which follow. Book, Sanhedrin 55b, quote, a maiden 3 years and a day may be acquired in marriage by coition, which coitus, you know what that means, right? And if her deceased husband's brother cohabits with her, she becomes his. The penalty of adultery may be incurred through her. If a niddah, she defiles him who has connection with her, so that he in turn defiles that upon which he lies. as a garment which has lain upon a person afflicted with gonorrhea. Emphasis in original text of Sonsino edition .ed. Close parentheses. Parentheses book. Sanhedrin 58b. Quote, R. Eleazar said in R. Hanina's name, if a heathen had an unnatural connection with his wife, he incurs guilt. For it is written, and he shall cleave, which excludes unnatural intercourse. Rabbah objected, is there anything for which a Jew is not punishable and a heathen is? But Rabbah said thus, a heathen who violates his neighbor's wife is free from punishment. Why so? Scripture said, to his wife, but not to his neighbors, and B shall cleave, which excludes unnatural intercourse, which I guess is sodomy. I don't know. This is fucking weird and fucking gross. Footnotes. 2. His wife deserves no pleasure from this, and hence there is no cleaving. 3. A variant reading of this passage is there anything permitted to a Jew which is forbidden to a heathen? Unnatural connection is permitted to a Jew. So, I guess homo, whatever. And 4. By taking the two in conjunction, the latter as illustrating the former, we learn that the guilt of violating the injunction to his wife, but not to his neighbor's wife, is incurred only for natural but not unnatural intercourse. Which I guess is why they don't see sodomy as sex. Because it doesn't count. It doesn't count. Okay. Sorry, y'all. Again, today, my eye is watering. Anyways. Parentheses, book, Sanhedrin 69a, quotation, a man, from this I know the law only with respect to a man, whence do I know it of one age 9 years and a day, who is capable of intercourse. From the verse, and if a man, he replied, such a minor can produce semen, but cannot beget therewith, for it is like the seed of cereals, less than a third grown. Parentheses, footnotes, number 2, and there's a quotation in parentheses, indicates an extension of the law and is here interpreted to include a minor aged 9 years and a day. 3, such cereals contain seed, which if sown, however, will not grow. Book, Sanhedrin 69b. Our rabbis taught if a woman sported lewdly with her young son, a minor, and he committed the first stage of cohabitation with her, Beth Shammai say, he thereby renders her unfit for the priesthood. Bet Hillel declared her fit. All agree that the connection of a boy 9 years and a day is a real connection, whilst that of one less than 8 years old is not. Their dispute refers only to one who is 8 years old. Footnotes. Parentheses. Number 1, i.e., she becomes a harlot whom a priest may not marry. And that's from Leviticus 13. I don't know. I don't know what L is in Roman numerals. I'm sorry. XXL. Anyways, okay. Number 2, so that if he was 9 years and a day more, Beth Hillel agrees that she is invalidated from the priesthood, whilst if he was less than 8, Beth Shammai agree that she is not. So you can be a complete and utter PDF file and be a part of the priesthood. Cool. Just, that's like I'm throwing up in my mouth. Disgusting. Okay. Book, in parentheses, Ketubot 5b. The question was asked, is it allowed to perform the first marital act on the Sabbath? Is the blood in the womb stored up, or is the result of a wound? Footnotes. 15. Literature. How is it? 16. When the intercourse could not take place before the Sabbath. Tosaf. 17. And the intercourse would be allowed since the blood flows out of its own accord, no wound having been made. 18. Lit. Or is it wounded and the intercourse would be forbidden? Book. Kethuboth 10a, 10b. Someone came, okay, this is in quotations. Someone came before Rabban Gamaliel, the son of a rabbi, and said to him, my master, I have had intercourse with my newly wedded wife, and I have not found any blood. She, the wife, said to him, my master, I am still a virgin. He then said to them, bring me 2 handmaidens, one who is a virgin and one who had intercourse with a man. They brought to him 2 such handmaids, and he placed them on a cask of wine. In the case of the one who was no more a virgin, its smell went through. In the case of the virgin, the smell did not go through. He then placed this one, the young wife, also on a cask of wine, and its smell did not go through. He then said to them, Go be happy with thy bargain. But he should have examined her from the beginning. See how gross these people are? They're disgusting. And, people would try to differentiate. Oh, well, their God is Satan. This is totally different from Yahweh. No, it's the same. It's the same guy. You guys want to try to differentiate Yahweh from Satan when he is Satan, bro. Okay. The footnotes. 1, the smell of the wine. 2, one could smell the wine from the mouth. 3, one could not smell the wine from the mouth. 4, i.e. the smell of the wine. 5, Rabban Gamaliel. 6, to the husband. 7, the test showed that the wife was a virgin. And 8, why did he have to experiment with the 2 handmaids? Oh my God, this is going to keep on going about exposing the Talmud. Okay. I think I'm going to stop here because I just literally cannot take any more of this disgusting tripe. But I will sit here and yap for a couple of minutes. All right. So, and this is good because this ties in with the Noahide laws, you guys. They're coming. Okay. Canada just passed the overall, they accepted them. All right. There was I think 45 of them that were out of town. I think 15 maybe abstained from voting. And still somehow they had the majority. I think, or maybe they didn't quite have the majority. I cannot remember. I was watching this video late last night that Stephen Ben Noon was talking. He was interviewing a lady from Canada who was saying that they've already passed them or they're dangerously close to passing them. So all of that to say, all of these Noahide laws are based on this disgusting Talmud, all right? And, people try to differentiate the Pharisees from, they were still in the temples and they were still worshiping Yahweh. This just goes to show where all of this leads, okay? Disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And Jesus came to set you free from all of that. And he came to set you free from the law of sin and death. You don't have to go back to Torah keeping to earn your salvation, all right? I just want to say a couple of things about what the scriptures, the New Testament says about the law, okay? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, okay. You know what? I'm going to address this whole people say, yeah, but the Talmud is straight from Satanism. Okay. And maybe they were practicing Talmud in the temple. Who knows? However, when you are reading, okay, John 8, you have to ask yourself, who is Jesus talking to? Where were they? He was talking to people, because people say the Pharisees left Yahweh for the devil. No, because they were standing in Yahweh's temple during Yahweh's feast. They kept Yahweh's law with a ferocity that leads them to pick up stones against a perceived blasphemy. Against whom? Against Yahweh. Okay? So the text does not support in the New Testament that the Pharisees had left Yahweh for Satan. All right? Yahweh is Satan. Anyways, I'm going to stop it here. Bid you adieu. Have a good day. And, pray to Jesus' Father about this. Don't pray to Yahweh, like I always say, because he is a liar and was a liar from the beginning. Jesus said so himself. Mwah. Have a good one.